It just seems like Activision Blizzard keeps getting windmill dunked on, and every time they sniff out even a little bit of a win, it's immediately followed by an absolute onslaught of L's, the likes we have not seen since EA. And the decline of Activision Blizzard as a whole is a bit of a sore spot for me. They used to be my favorite company, who made my favorite games of all time: StarCraft, Warcraft 3, and World of Warcraft, namely those. I even really liked Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone, Diablo 3, and even Overwatch on launch. I played the Blizzard games for, well, about 10 years, and they produced some of my favorite gaming memories. And over the years, watching their gradual decline into this amorphous blob that just seemingly can't stop tripping over themselves has been definitely something to look at. And especially this year, I just feel like it's all coming to a bit of a head. I'm sure they're gonna still make a bunch of money, that's not the point of this video. And if you think all of the negative Steam reviews are gonna make it so they don't turn a profit, well, I'm sorry to say, you're probably gonna be disappointed. But when I say the decline of Activision Blizzard, I'm not talking from a monetary success standpoint. They have a bunch of finance nerds that tell them that behind the scenes. I'm talking about the quality of the products that they put out there for the consumers. Overwatch 2 being a freaking laughingstock in the FPS scene, barely even quantifying as a sequel. And just having that modern gaming AAA multiplayer experience of just giving the players an empty promise and never delivering on it with the single player that was promised, just freaking chef's kiss. Mwah! Oh, it's hot out the oven. Followed the recipe for a modern day AAA FPS multiplayer game to a freaking T. And you follow that up, and this is what I'm talking about when I say that Activision Blizzard can't stop tripping over themselves. They come out with Diablo 4, a game I wasn't interested in, but I followed a little bit of the news, because some people that I watch play the game. And it seemed to be a game of hit and misses, but mostly hits, and that was cool to see. They finally released a game that was in a semi-competent state, and then immediately with the first patch messed it all up, and turned the entire community, well, not the entire community, bit hyperbolic, but you know what I mean, a lot of people on the internet against them. And having played Activision Blizzard games for over 10 years at this point, they always follow a singular line of, I would say thought, but it's more like action. A singular line of action that they always use, and people always call out what in the moment, but then immediately forget it when the cycle goes back to the top of the circle. And what is that I mean? They release a game in a clearly unprepared state, unfinished, with significant and obvious flaws if you played even 10 minutes of the game. They will then proceed to look at community feedback and not act on any of it. And the solutions that they do propose to fix the game are half-assed at best, don't address the root issue, and just kick the ball down the proverbial court to be picked up another day. Stash tabs in Diablo 4 being a prime example of this. And then when they release a patch that kind of puts their foot through the door of what would be a complete change, but they never completely adhere to any one idea, people praise them that they're going on the right path, despite the fact it was freaking obvious what path they should have walked from the very beginning, and then those same people are immediately surprised when Activision Blizzard continues to mess up and provide BS reasoning for a lot of their decision-making that makes absolutely no sense when you look at the reality of each individual situation. A lot of my examples will come from World of Warcraft, but if you spend any time in the Diablo 4 community at all, you will find out easily some of these ideas that I'm talking about, as like that one example where they give that the reason they can't have more stash tabs is because whenever you are playing the game and you find another player, it loads their entire stash tab as well, for some ungodly reason, despite the fact they chose for the game to be always online. And despite the fact that reasoning makes very little sense considering World of Warcraft is right there. So like, why do you do it for Diablo 4 for the stash tabs, but not for World of Warcraft? Or if you do, why is it better optimized in World of Warcraft? It doesn't make any sense from the consumer's perspective, which is ultimately the only perspective that matters in the end if you care about public perception. It's the same cycle over and over and over again, yet people are always surprised when it repeats. And more often than not, alongside most of these terrible decisions that I see them make as a company, they rarely are ever just based on the execution of said idea. The concept itself is deeply flawed, or the concept that they provide seems malicious, at least on the surface. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, go look up the season passes, the premium ones for Diablo 4, and how easily you can actually redeem those when you don't want to. For most games, if you want to redeem something that costs money, or you want to make an actual purchase, it requires a couple of inputs, just to make sure that you don't accidentally redeem the thing. That's not the case in Diablo 4, at least from what I've seen, when it comes to redeeming the premium battle pass. So to me, a lot of these design choices boil down to one of two ideas, either incompetence or maliciousness, and neither are preferable. Like, either they don't know what they're doing, or they do know what they're doing, and I'm not sure which is worse. Maybe that they don't know what they're doing, because at least maliciousness and greed is predictable. And you look at the state of Overwatch 2 in a lot of ways, and most of my issues when it comes to modern-day multiplayer AAA games can boil down to looking at Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2. And it comes in the progression systems, and I don't know why, within the last 8 or so years, people for some reason are fine with sacrificing cosmetic progression on the altar of monetization. I've talked about this issue in other games like in Halo and Call of Duty, but it's also still the same here. I lost interest in Overwatch relatively quickly on launch. I played for a little bit, but having your main form of progression boil down to a freaking loot box was the most uninspired, uninteresting path of progression that just randomized every drop you gained, made any actual progression that required an ounce of player agency like the coin system take freaking forever, to the point that it's like watching a bunch of tortoises try and do a mythic raid in World of Warcraft. It's gonna be slow and monotonous and require a lot of attempts. I even logged onto Overwatch 2 today to try out the new invasion mode, and I realized, oh, the single player missions, you have to buy them, despite the fact I bought Overwatch 1 and I thought that was supposed to carry over or something. I'm not gonna blame them for that, because I could have just been misremembering that situation, but there was this, like, one event you could do in co-op, right? And so I did it, and it's one of the most boring, repetitive modes, or, like, single player mission ideas I've ever seen. That basically just boiled down to 2 glorified defensive sections, as you got a robot to turn on, and then escort quested to another defensive section. We just fought the same, like, 3 mobs over and over again. Like, that's not a section that difficulty fixes, in my opinion. It's just uninspired. And if that was supposed to advertise to me the single-player missions to buy them, it woefully underrepresented what they could possibly do. I have absolutely no desire to look into those even more. And it's such a shame, because Overwatch is a game with so much personality behind it, with each character. And I'm not a fan of hero shooters, and Overwatch is like the titular hero shooter. But at the same time, Blizzard games just overall have that sense of flair and personality to them that just kind of draws you in. But every time and time again, they mess it up. And the mess-ups are never, or rarely ever, outside reasons. It's always internal mess-ups or design choices that just significantly compromise the actual experience to make the game no longer as fun or engaging as you know that it could be. And it just leaves this perpetual bad taste in your mouth as you can feel the design choices that are supposed to elongate your playtime or guide you on the path to opening your wallet and spending money, instead of just producing a well-rounded game that is fun and interesting by itself, especially when it comes to playing with other people. And I think when you look at the Steam reviews for Overwatch 2, yeah, it's a fun thing to meme at, and I even did that last night in the short, but at the same time it's a microcosm of the community anger and sentiment about the company as a whole, because a lot of people grew up with Blizzard games, and a lot of people played those games in their formative years, and it gave them comfort, and just seeing the games and seemingly their gaming history just wither and decline into this whatever this current state is just kind of upsetting and disappointing more than anything, because you know the potential that these developers can do, but it's just bad business practice after bad business practice. I still hold and attest to the idea that battle passes are one of the most uninteresting, boring pieces of progression I've ever seen in a video game, that absolutely rips out any interesting sense of player agency when it comes to the progression of a game, to deliver to you this freaking on-rails experience where you have to buy the progression system and then continue to grind it out. But it became so normalized because it wasn't technically as bad as a loot box that people just turn a blind eye to it now. And Blizzard seemingly is going all in on this system, and it compromises every game that I see it in. And such a shame, right? Because Diablo 4 has so much potential, but they keep squandering every ounce of potential that they even have. Every good idea is preceded by 5 terrible ones. Note that I didn't even say great idea, because I haven't had one of those in a long time. And I know that sounds harsh, but it comes from the heart. I grew up on these games, and I know what Blizzard's potential is, and I know how they keep failing on it. The best thing they probably have going for them right now is World of Warcraft Classic, and I'm not too knowledgeable on that situation, but it seemingly is trending in the right direction, and that's something nice to say at least. To know that it's not all bad, right? And I know we haven't heard much from World of Warcraft just because it kind of bowed out from the public eye in a lot of ways. It still has a massive player base, don't get me wrong, but World of Warcraft used to have this air where you kind of knew what was going on even if you didn't play. Now, if you don't play, you probably won't hear of it at all. But everything that I'm seeing from World of Warcraft, at least from the infrequent glances I give it, at least that game seemingly is heading in the right direction with Dragonflight, but I'm waiting for the what if, and I'm waiting for the buts to come in. Because this is Activision Blizzard, there are always going to be something bad coming down the line, and they have not given me a reason to be optimistic and to believe that those bad things aren't coming down the pipeline at some point. Or they're already there and I'm just not in tune with that community anymore to know them. But it's such a shame to see the downward trajectory that this company has taken. And it isn't even recently, it's been ever since Overwatch came out, and I'll attest to that, probably even before that. It started with the end of StarCraft 2, arguably even back in the days of Warlords of Draenor for World of Warcraft, or even the end of Mr. Pandaria, where it always seemed like they came across either time issues or just some other issue. And one of the reasons I don't play these games anymore is because I got tired of every time something cool comes out, I always have to hear, but there's a but. And I got tired of the excuses and all of the things I would have to try and ignore to produce a valuable experience out of it. My interest in these games and the company as a whole just kind of eroded with time. And when I really started to expand my horizons and play other games, the things that I was putting up with when I played Activision Blizzard games became far more apparent and unignorable until I just stopped playing them altogether. There's far too many great games where I don't have to have this concept that I have to put up with a whole bunch of bad things, bad design choices, and design choices that just feel implemented just to squeeze out player time and to incentivize microtransactions for me to care anymore. There's far too many good games coming out, and I'd rather focus my time and effort on those games than trying to put up 5 times the effort to get 1% of the enjoyment by playing one of these games from Activision Blizzard. It's nothing but a sea of endless excuses and back-end hamstrings of their own design that just eventually gave, well, I guess not really gave, more like it was the final straw that broke the camel's back for me. And while, yeah, it's fun to, meme on these games, especially in the Steam reviews and the Metacritic score, sure, but I'm always just reminded of what if and what was when it comes to this company. But hey, at least those memories will never fade, you know? And while they may not be capable of putting out quality, consistent products anymore, at least other people are. I choose to remember the good, but not to let the good cloud my mind about the current state of affairs for them. It's a sad reality, but it's a reality nonetheless. And to close your eyes and put your head in the proverbial sand does not masquerade the truth. That truth is self-evident, at least in my eyes. Video games are inherently subjective, and your opinions and perspectives on what you can tolerate and what you just don't care about will vary upon the individual. And if you like these games, that's entirely fine. I can only give you my perspective and my opinions on the situation. But to me, I wouldn't even say that my interests just gradually changed from theirs. They just gradually moved away from me. And that's a completely different feeling than my interests just changing over time, which they have, but not as much as they have. So I think I'll call the video there for today. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on Activision Blizzard's modern state. Are there any games you still enjoy? Do you still play, or have you stopped? And let me know what your last game was, if you have. I'd love to hear your stories and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again.